talking about customer satisfaction, what else do you mean?
It depends on what you're selling and the route to market.
We are talking today about building your supply chain to ensure customer satisfaction. My conversation with Sandra MacQuillan. She is Chief Supply Chain Officer with Kimberly-Clark. Hello, Sandra. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you very much for being with us. Now, every company in the world talks about being customer-centric. It's become a cliche, but at Kimberly-Clark, I think you're really trying to make that a real thing. Could you talk a little bit about how you do, in fact, put the customer at the center of everything?
Yeah, with pleasure. Actually, what you start with is, what does the customer think? So you start talking to your customer or your consumer, depending on how you define it, and you really look at what are they looking for, and you start looking at how do you measure how they measure in terms of what you bring into your supply chain. So that's the first piece, really getting to understand what the consumer or the customer is after. And you won't know everything because, of course, they're not going to give you everything. So also being able to interpret what you think they mean and spending more and more time with them is hugely important in that, in terms of bringing them to the center of what you do. The other thing that you have to really focus on, which is where we're focusing strongly, is around making sure that every element of your supply chain understands its role in delivering customer satisfaction. So an example of that would be, if you're in procurement, then sometimes you can feel disconnected or not connected at all with where the customer is, the shelf, the power of the shelf. And you can actually relay a metric there on, so what's your supplier service? Because if your supplier is late in with something, how does that knock onto your manufacturing, your logistics, and onto the shelf itself? And really getting people to understand that, yes, the service piece is really important, but also if the metric is saving money, it's all very well to save money in procurement, but if the product that you're buying isn't able to be run, so the raw material isn't being able to be run on your machine, you may have saved some money in procurement but cost more money in the manufacturing organisation and not provided a product to logistics that can then provide the product to the consumer and customer themselves. So you try and find metrics, you focus on what the consumer and customer really need.
Well, you say consumer or customer. When we're talking about customer satisfaction, what customer are we actually trying to satisfy? Me, the person who buys the box of Kleenex, or the big box store that buys these huge amounts? Who is your actual customer in your mind?
It depends. It depends on what you're selling and the route to market that you have. It can be the retailer, so the customer would be the retailer here, so your big department or your big retail stores and your Walmarts or Amazons or any of these. And then actually, as you move more and more down into omni-channel and e-commerce, it can be the person sat at the computer ordering on Amazon or jet.com or whatever, ordering there to get their product as well. So it depends. That would be a consumer or a customer. You can define it that way.
Yeah. What shifts in mindset have you had to undergo within the organization to reach this goal? You hinted at that when you talked about the need to tie procurement to the rest of the organization, but in a larger sense, what kind of transformation has the entire organization undergone to reach this goal?
So the first transformation is understanding what a supply chain is. So when I started in my role about 3.5 years ago, we didn't have a supply chain organisation in Kimberly-Clark. So spending time, and I did a lot of time in the first year, actually explaining and describing what a supply chain is. That it is procurement, manufacturing, logistics, quality and safety and sustainability connected and working together. So that was a big shift, particularly when you look at the history in Kimberly-Clark of being very manufacturing focused. So that's how it grew up, its DNA is manufacturing. So how do you bring the balance of what each function brings rather than one is more important than the other in this supply chain focus that you have to do? So that was the first bit that we had to do. Then explaining actually what the role is in terms of what each function can do to be able to drive that, like I was saying about procurement. Same for manufacturing. If you focus purely in the vertical silo, which is a very healthy place to be, but if you're purely focusing on that and you're saying, if I make this product and make more of this product, I can save money, you can do that within the silo of manufacturing, but you're now giving a problem to procurement and to logistics. So you're not meeting the customer's needs because you're making an independent choice. So showing manufacturing what their role is in service in that area to the shelf is also very important. So that's the kind of transformation we've had to go through, explaining what a supply chain is, explaining that every element has a role to play in terms of driving what the customer wants. And also, I think very importantly, not fighting the traditional mindset that has been supply chain's about cost reduction. There's an element of supply chain that is around efficiency and effectiveness, and embracing that is really powerful. And I think if you embrace that and say to the organisation in totality, yeah, this is our job to fuel growth by finding cost and cash. At the same time, we have all these other elements that we can bring. We can bring the service, the quality, the cash, all of these efficiency elements as well. So don't put us in the box of just cost saving. Widen, in fact, take us out the box and think differently about what we can bring in partnership with our sister functions on demand.
So are we past the point now when you introduce yourself as Chief Supply Chain Officer, the other person goes, Chief what?
No.
You're still having to say what that is.
Oh, not in KC, no. In Kimberly-Clark, no. But I think as an industry, we still don't have one definition of what supply chain is. You know, you go to different companies and they'll define it differently. And actually, for an organisation or an industry that is very much about making it simple and trying to explain, it's probably something that we do need to invest in, is how do we define it. Within Kimberly-Clark, no, I think we've broken the back of that. When I pulled the organisation together, I made sure we had key brilliant leaders in the functions of procurement, manufacturing and logistics, quality, safety and sustainability, because they raise the credibility of those functions and then people get it much easier. I think as an industry, we've still got some work to do to define what it actually is.
And within the organization, obviously you are on a journey, there's no end to this, but how well are you bringing everyone along on this journey with you right now? What remains to be done? What additional challenges for the future?
Yeah. I think the last 3 years have been a phenomenal delivery actually to the supply chain. So I think the initial 3-year piece in terms of upping our game by 25 to 30% on cost saving, which is where you need to start to get the credibility, upping our game on service significantly, upping our game on inventory reduction and also doing the same around quality and some of those key core metrics. We've really had massive progress, and I'm very proud of what the supply chain in Kimberly-Clark has done. And it's both across the business units and also in the central team as well. That's how we work in a matrix. Actually, what we haven't yet done is really brought out the huge value that the interdependencies across an integrated supply chain can bring. So we're still on that evolution. It's only 3 years, it takes time. We're now in that phase of our journey where we're looking at the interfaces and the interdependency connection points between suppliers and procurement, so working right out to the source, you know, procurement, manufacturing logistics, and logistics to our customers. So we're really looking at making sure that we're getting the full value out of that. And that's going to take more time.
And you sit, in your job, you sit right in the middle. You're looking upstream to suppliers, you're looking downstream to customers. How do you even achieve that massively broad view, just personally on a daily basis?
With some brilliant people who lead it actually for me. The team, I think that's a critical piece. You have to have people in place who are highly competent in what they can do and also very committed to the vision of what you want to bring. So we set up a vision of creating value from source to shelf, and that shelf is either virtual or physical in terms of the different kinds of channels that we have now. We set that up as a team across both the BUs, the business units, and the central global functional leaders, and committed to that. And then we set up a mission around, we're going to do that by partnering with our business units to drive value, not cost saving, but value in all its definitions, and also to really bring positive benefit to margin. So again, we shifted to a language of talking about in a business unit language rather than in a supply chain language. So we created the why we're here, we created what we're going to do, and then we also decided as a team how we're going to do it. You know, we're going to develop the strategies at the global level, which is with the business units as well, and then we'll deploy them to the regions because that's where the work happens, and then we'll deliver it in the local units. So we found a role for everybody, and we haven't changed that for 3.5 years actually, and we have no intention of changing that moving forward. At the same time, we created key focus areas, 5 key strategies that we wanted to work on, and we've remained resolute at actually focusing on those. And interestingly enough, I was talking to we had a big town hall session recently, and they said, oh, you haven't changed what we're doing in supply chain for 3 years. We're so pleased, you know, because if you're not careful, you can get into a place where you're constantly iterating and you're not really delivering. So I think where we've got to is that we really believe what we're doing. We believe in what we're doing. I have a team who are fantastic at working together to make it happen, and we're not changing it every 5 minutes. So we're giving stability and credibility to the 30,000 people who live in supply chain.
Well, we wish you the best of luck in the future of Kimberly-Clark. Thanks so much, Sandra, for giving us a view inside the company and its struggle. I don't know if you want to call it that, but it's programmed to ensure customer satisfaction. Thanks very much for talking to us.
My pleasure. I like to look at it as an adventure, actually.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have been speaking with Sandra MacQuillan of Kimberly-Clark. Thank you very much for watching.